Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. God bless you all. This is Gloria White coming to you from Utah, USA. Hope everyone's saying their prayers, keeping their brothers and sisters before the Lord for protection, and praying for the people in Afghan and all around the world, the children. The children. Oh Lord, preserve the children. And praying for Israel and Jerusalem. Praying for our fellow men that God would meet their every need. And in Jesus' precious name, amen. Today we're going to continue in the book of 2 Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible. And we are in chapter 17, verse 7. Observations on the fall of the northern kingdom. This happened because the Israelites had sinned against Yahweh their God, who had brought them out of Egypt, out of the grip of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They worshipped other gods. They followed the practices of the nations which Yahweh had dispossessed for them. The Israelites spoke slightingly of Yahweh their God. They built themselves high places wherever they lived, from watchtower to fortified town. They set up pillars and sacred poles for themselves on every high hill and under every luxuriant tree. They sacrificed on all the high places like the nations which Yahweh had expelled for them, and did wicked things there, provoking Yahweh's anger. They served idols, although Yahweh had told them, "This you must not do." And yet, through all the prophets and the seers, Yahweh had given Israel and Judah this warning: "Turn from your wicked ways and keep my commandments and my laws in accordance with the entire law which I laid down for your fathers and delivered to them through my servants, the prophets." But they would not listen. They were as stubborn as their ancestors, who had no faith in Yahweh their God. They despised his laws and the covenant which he had made with their ancestors, and the warnings which he had given them. Pursuing futility, they themselves became futile through their copying the nations round them, although Yahweh had ordered them not to act as they did. They rejected all the commandments of Yahweh their God, and cast themselves metal idols. 2 calves they made themselves sacred poles. They worshipped the whole array of heaven, and they served Baal. They caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire of sacrifice. Also they practiced divinations and sorcery. They sold themselves to doing what displeases Yahweh, provoking his anger, because of which Yahweh became enraged with Israel and thrust them away from him. The tribe of Judah was the only one left. Judah did not keep the commandments of Yahweh their God either, but copied the practices which Israel had introduced. Yahweh rejected the whole race of Israel. He brought them low, delivering them into the hands of marauders, until at length he thrust them away from him. And indeed he had torn Israel away from the house of David, and they had made Jeroboam son of Nebat king. Jeroboam had drawn Israel away from Yahweh and led them into a great sin. The Israelites copied the sin which Jeroboam had committed. They did not give it up, until at length Yahweh thrust Israel away from him, as he had foretold through all his servants the prophets. He deported the Israelites from their own country to Assyria, where they have been ever since. The origin of the Samaritans. The king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in the towns of Samaria to replace the Israelites. These took possession of Samaria and lived in its towns. When they first came to live there, they did not worship Yahweh, since Yahweh set lions on them, which killed a number of them. Consequently, the king of Assyria was informed as follows: "The nations whom you deported and settled in the towns of Samaria do not know how to worship the local God, and he has set lions on them. And now these are killing them because they do not know how to worship the local God." So the king of Syria gave this order: "Send back one of the priests whom I deported from there. Let him go and live there and teach them how to worship the local God." Accordingly, one of the priests who had been deported from Samaria came to live in Bethel. He taught them how to worship Yahweh. Each nationality made gods of its own and put them in the shrines of the high places built by the Samaritans. Each nationality did this in the towns where it lived. The people from Babylon had made a Succoth Benoth. The people from Cutha and Nergal. The people from Hamath and Ashima. The Avites a Nibhaz and a Tartak, while the Sepharvites caused their children to pass through the fire of sacrifice to Adrammelech and Anamamelech, gods of Sepharvaim. They worshipped Yahweh as well, and they appointed priests out of their own number for the high places, and these officiated in the shrines on the high places. They worshipped Yahweh and served their own gods at the same time, with the rites of the countries from which they had been deported. They still follow their own rites even now. They did not worship Yahweh, and did not conform to his statutes or ritual, or the law, or the commandments, which Yahweh had laid down for the sons of Jacob, to whom he gave the name Israel. Yahweh had made a covenant with them, and had given them this command: "You are not to worship alien gods. You are not to bow down to them, or serve them, or offer them sacrifices. You are to bow down and offer sacrifice only to Yahweh, who brought you out of Egypt with great power and outstretched arm. You are to observe the statutes and ritual, the law and the commandments which he has given you in writing, and to which you are always to conform. You are not to worship alien gods. Do not forget the covenant which I have made with you, and do not venerate alien gods, but venerate Yahweh your God, and he will deliver you from the clutches of all your enemies." But they would not listen, and still followed their old rites. These nationalities then worshipped Yahweh and served their idols as well, as did their children and their children's children. Still behave today as their ancestors behaved in the past. Section 8. The last years of the kingdom of Judah. Thank you. So we are in Section 8, the last years of the kingdom of Judah. Part A. Hezekiah the prophet, Isaiah, Assyria. Introduction to the reign of Hezekiah, 716 to 687. Chapter 18. In the 3rd year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he came to the throne, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what Yahweh regards as right, just as his ancestor David had done. He abolished the high places, broke down the pillars, cut down the sacred poles, and smashed the bronze serpent which Moses had made. For up to that time the Israelites had offered sacrifices to it. It was called Nehushtan. He put his trust in Yahweh, God of Israel. No king of Judah after him could be compared with him, nor any of those before him. He was devoted to Yahweh, never turning from him, but keeping the commandments which Yahweh had laid down for Moses. And so Yahweh was with him, and he was successful in all that he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and refused to serve him. He beat the Philistines back to Gaza, laying down their territory waste from watchtower to fortified town. The fall of Samaria, recapitulation. Excuse me again. Okay. The fall of Samaria, recapitulation. In the 4th year of Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, marched on Samaria and laid siege to it. He captured it after 3 years. Samaria fell in the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hosea, king of Israel. The king of Assyria deported the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Halah, on the Habor, a river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. This happened because they had not obeyed the voice of Yahweh their God, and had broken his covenant, everything that Moses, servant of Yahweh, had laid down. They neither listened to it nor put it into practice. Sennacherib's invasion. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, advanced on all the fortified towns of Judah and captured them. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent this message to the king of Assyria at Lachish: I have been at fault. Call off the attack, and I will submit to whatever you impose on me. The king of Assyria exacted 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold from Hezekiah, king of Judah. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver in the temple of Yahweh and in the palace treasury, at which time Hezekiah stripped the facing from the leaves and the jambs of the doors of the temple of Yahweh, which an earlier king of Judah had put on, and gave it to the king of Assyria. I think I'd have went to war before I'd have been tearing up God's temple. The embassy of the cupbearer in chief. From Lachish, the king of Assyria sent the cupbearer in chief with a large force to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem. He marched on Jerusalem, and on his arrival took up position near the conduit of the upper pool, which is on the road to Fuller's Field. He summoned the king, the master of the palace, Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, Shebna, the secretary, and herald, Joab, son of Asaph, went out to meet him. The cupbearer in chief said to them, Say to Hezekiah, the great king, the king of Assyria says this: What makes you so confident? Do you think empty words are as good a strategy as military strength? Who are you relying on to dare to rebel against me? There you are, relying on that broken reed Egypt, which pricks and pierces the hand of whoever leans on it. This is what Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is like to all who rely on him. You may say to me, we rely on Yahweh our God, but his high places and altars not, but have his high places and altars not been suppressed by Hezekiah, who told Judah and Jerusalem, here in Jerusalem is the altar before which you must worship. Very well, then, make a wager with my lord the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you can find horsemen to ride them. How could you repel a single one of the least of my master's soldiers? And yet you have relied on Egypt for chariots and horsemen. And lastly, have I marched on this place to lay it waste without warrant from Yahweh? Yahweh himself said to me, march on this country and lay it waste. Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to the cupbearer in chief, please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in Judean language, within earshot of the people of the ramparts. But the cupbearer in chief said, do you think my lord sent me here to say these things to your master or to you? On the contrary, it was to the people sitting on the ramparts who, like you, are doomed to eat their own dung and drink their own urine. The cupbearer in chief then drew himself up and shouted loudly in the Judean language, listen to the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. The king says this, do not let Hezekiah delude you. He will be powerless to save you from my clutches. Do not let Hezekiah persuade you to rely on Yahweh by saying, Yahweh is sure to save us. This city will not fall into the king of Assyria's clutches. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for the king of Assyria says this, make peace with me, surrender to me, and every one of you will be free to eat the fruit of his own vine and of his own fig tree, and to drink water of his own storage well, until I come and take you away to the country like your own, a land of corn and good wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of oil and honey. So you will survive and not die. Do not listen to Hezekiah. He is deluding you when he says, Yahweh will save us. Has any god of any nation been able to save this country from the king of Assyrian's clutches? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim and Hina and Iva? Where are the local gods of Samaria? Did they save Samaria from my clutches? Of all the local gods, which ones have saved their countries from my clutches? For Yahweh, to be able to save Jerusalem from my clutches. The people, however, kept quiet and said nothing in reply, since the king had given the order. You are not to answer him. The master of the palace, Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, Shebna, the secretary, and the herald Joash, son of Asaph, with their clothes torn, went to Hezekiah and reported what the cupbearer in chief had said. Sorry I went over a ways, but it was right in the middle of a good part and I didn't want to quit. So, as always, we'll continue tomorrow, God willing, and we'll be in chapter 9. The prophet Isaiah is consulted. And as always, I love you.